President Bush gives the final State of the Union speech of his presidency. Typically, a president would like to focus on cementing his legacy in his final year in office, but President Bush is forced to focus more on the troubled economy. Fox's Rich Edson has a preview of the president's speech tonight. Hi, Rich.
Well, good evening, and I think the tone down here is really cooperation. We've heard so much in the way of cooperation from the president. He wants to push initiatives that he says he thinks he can get done by the last year of his term. This is the last year of the last State of the Union address he's going to give. As far as the economy is concerned, he says he'd like to trust people with their own money, an extension of the Bush tax cuts that are set to expire in just a few years from now. Also look for the president to ask for that economic stimulus package to be passed as quickly as possible. You know, he brokered a deal with the House of Representatives. That needs to get through the Senate as well. On free trade, he's going to call for that Colombia free trade deal to also be passed. There are some other initiatives in there, $300 million for kids in troubled inner city schools. That was announced earlier today. So there are plenty of issues on the economy the president wants to pass in realistic terms, working with the Democratic Congress.
Rich, thanks so much. And as Rich talked about there, the president will possibly bring up in his State of the Union address that economic stimulus package, tax rebates for first-time home buyers, making his tax cuts permanent, and free trade agreements with Latin America and South Korea. So let's delve into all of this with Dan North. He's a chief economist with Euler Hermes ACI, and Ann Sullivan from Women Impacting Public Policy. That is a bipartisan group that advocates on behalf of women and minorities in business. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's start with you. So Rich had mentioned that there are some programs for minorities, for people low income and so forth that may help them in this troubled economy. You must be happy to hear that.
Absolutely. And the goal of the economic stimulus package is to put it in the hands of people who are going to spend it right away. So small business is the perfect group of people to give some economic stimulus to as well.
Does your group like what the president has been doing the past several months? Or I know you have trouble with the Small Business Administration and so forth, but in broad terms with the president's plans?
With regard to the economic stimulus package, absolutely. We like businesses like tax cuts. They like expensing, increased expensing. They like being able to increase their ability to buy machinery and invest in business and in the economy.
And Dan, will all of this make a difference? I mean, if we are indeed going into a recession, some people think we may be in one already. Will the president's proposals that he's going to lay out tonight, will that make a difference for us?
It'll make a difference on the back end of the recession. It'll help then, but it's not going to prevent us from going into a recession. I think it's really too late. If we're on the verge of a recession, if not on one already, and this package has to happen first. It's got to go through the Senate where they're bogging things down, and then they've got to write the checks. And Secretary Paulson saying we can get them out in 30 days, but the pundits are saying it's more likely to be May, maybe even June. So it's got to happen, and by then we're likely to be well into the recession.
And Dan, what do you make of the president's going to focus tonight on the free trade agreements with Colombia, South Korea, Peru, a couple of other Latin American countries? Some of the presidential candidates on the campaign trail are saying, hey, we need to pull back on being so free in our trade because it's hurting jobs here at home, and we're not getting the best end of those deals.
Right.
Is that true, you as an economist?
Well, I think you have to take the long view, and I think that free trade is certainly positive for the economy, for the global economy. It's hard to swallow when you're an auto worker in Michigan and the jobs are disappearing, and that sort of benefit to the broad economy isn't at all obvious. So it's it's a tough call. I think for the long term, it's the right thing to do. But it's getting closer to home when we are losing so many jobs right away. The other part that you don't hear about a whole lot is there's outsourcing overseas. There's outsourcing to us too. It goes both ways, and you never hear about the other half. So
right.
It may not be quite as bad as you think.
But Ann, you see, I mean, your group works with these people, these businesses that are being hurt by some of these very liberal free trade agreements, where other countries, they have so many policies that are much more favorable to their businesses and to their workers, and yet when we do these free trade agreements, it seems our workers and businesses suffer sometimes.
Well, I think you're right. I think a lot of times they suffer. It's always a delicate balance between protecting what we need to protect at home or increasing our sales overseas. So it's really product by product, issue by issue, But small businesses, especially in the manufacturing industry, has had a really tough go of it since so much is outsourced.
Your group, have you endorsed a particular presidential candidate?
No, we haven't, and we don't plan to, because about half of our membership is Republican and half is Democrat. We've polled them a lot of different times, and they split down the middle. So what we want to do is give them the best information they can have to come to their own decision and their own conclusion.
And Dan, let me ask you, the Federal Reserve this week meeting, how much of a interest rate cut do you expect from them, if any at all? Most people are expecting something.
Yeah, I think the expectations are very hard that it's going to be 50 basis points. And the way the Fed has almost kowtowed to the markets over the past couple of weeks, and the trader from SocGen, I think he's definitely going to go 50 basis points. Otherwise, I think we'll see a meltdown.
All right, Dan North and Ann Sullivan, thank you both very much for appearing on Happy Hour. And stay with Fox Business tonight for our special coverage of President Bush's final State of the Union address. It starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, and Neil Cavuto will have that for you covered. On tap next, it's Last Call on Happy Hour. We'll be right back with the Mixer.
Over here, go.